Okay, good evening. Parsha's Sisa, 3 offerings tonight, and if you're listening online, please email me at j.golker@gmail.com and I'll send you the handout. The opening idea is something which we have said in previous years, but I want to just add to it. It's just an interesting concept. I shared it with someone earlier this week, and he had never heard it before. So for those who have never heard it, it's actually it's striking and it's very lovely. When you are in shul this Shabbos, so if you're preparing Shnai Mikra before Shabbos, something very unusual about Parshas Sisa is the split of the parshas. Normally, the 7 aliyahs, the 7 division of the Parsha, is spread fairly equally, generally speaking. Sometimes a bit longer, sometimes a bit shorter, but generally they're equal. In Parshas Sisa, there is a very notable sort of lopsidedness. Rishon is huge, Sheni is huge, and the other 5 aliyahs are very, very short. And many times you're in shul, you're wondering about it. There must be something to it, and there is. And I heard this. There are different people saying the names of different people. I heard it's the name of Rabbi Ordman. Rabbi Ordman was the Rosh Hashiva of Eitz Chaim here on this street in London. He was a tremendous Talmud Chacham. I once heard Rabbi Roberts say he once spoke at one of Rabbi Ordman's Einikel's bar mitzvahs. And we know his 2 sons, Aleim HaShalom, one was Nochem Ordman, one was Jack Ordman. They were well-known personalities here in the Kehillah. Both used to teach at Hazmanian, and sadly are no longer alive. But their father was Rabbi Ordman. So he once spoke Rabbi Roberts once spoke at a bar mitzvah, an Einekel of Rabbi Ordman, and he gave the bar mitzvah boy bracha. And he said, you should grow up to be half a big as Talmud Chacham as your Zayda, and you should know that that's a massive, massive bracha. Because he was really a Velt Talmud Chacham. Anyway, I heard in his name that the idea is this. The central theme of Parshas Sisa is, of course, the Egel HaZahav, the terrible chait of the Egel HaZahav. Now, when you call up someone and they're laning the Egel HaZahav, you feel a little bit uncomfortable that your antecedents were involved in the terrible avera of the Egel HaZahav. Even a Kohen, Aaron HaKohen, although he tried to prevent it to the extent he could, he's sort of guilty by association. And therefore, there is only one person you can call up who will feel comfortable, who will not be offended, as it were, by when you're laning the story of the Chet of the Egel whilst he's standing there. And who is that? That is the Levi. Because Shevet Levi, Mil Hashem Elai, they were not involved in the Chet of the Egel. Therefore, to facilitate that story is read with the Levi standing there, having been called up, you dafka make sure that the whole of the story of Egel HaZahav is Levi. To facilitate that, you've got a very long Rishon to get to that story. Then you call up the Levi, which is the whole Parsha of the Egel HaZahav, and then the rest of the Parsha you just divide up with 5 equal short divisions. So it's an expression of sensitivity to avoid offending anyone other than, of course, the Levi, who feels comfortable standing there at the story of the Egel HaZahav. Now, I mentioned this, like I said, some years ago, I can't remember when, but I wanted to add a couple of stories just to highlight how Chazal are very aware of the sensitivity of a person, how important it is. So, a couple of Maislach. Number one, there's a story I came across about Avram Genichovsky. He was a big Talmud Chacham. He learned in Ponevezh and in Slobodka in the years after the war. And one time, he was in the yeshiva. This is later on when he was already a Rav. And he came out of the bathroom. And he was walking towards the bathroom. And one of the Talmidim saw that he was going to the bathroom and noted that the sink outside the bathroom, he knew it was broken. And he decided, therefore, to bring some water for his Rav, because otherwise the sink would be broken. So he ran across the building, took a keli with him, and dashed across, and eventually made his way back with a keli full of water. So those few minutes later, he came back. Rabbi Genichovsky was standing by the sink, and he says, Rabbi, I've got some water for you. Oh, shkech, that's very kind of you, thank you so much. He takes the thing, washes his hands, and the Talmud is waiting to hear the bracha, the Ashiyotza. And he missed it, he doesn't hear it. Waits a few moments, maybe he missed it, maybe he didn't hear it, and he walks on, he makes his way. He just noted it's a bit funny, and Rabbi Genichovsky goes off. Another Talmud, who's been observing this whole scene, goes over to the boy who had brought the water, and he says to him, look, I just want to tell you what happened. He said, I observed the whole scene, it was very kind of you what you did, You saw the Rav go into the bathroom and you ran to get the water. He came out. Actually, the sinks were fixed today. So when he came out, he had washed his hands, he'd made the bracha v'ashayos, and then suddenly you appeared with this keli. So to say to you, actually I've washed my hands, is a bit deflating. I've schlepped across the whole building to bring you water and I'm not going to use it. So to make you feel better, he said, fine, that's very kind of you, thank you, and he washed his hands again. Of course, he couldn't make an ashayos, he's already made one. But that's a sort of a split decision, a moment of sensitivity. And it happened actually in school this week. It's interesting, whenever I speak in school, I need the mic. I haven't got a particularly strong voice. Rabbi Hartman, when he speaks, he doesn't use the mic. Even though you've got a big hall with a couple hundred boys, he doesn't need a mic. So we often have problems with the mic. The batteries go in the middle and there's a caretaker, the site team on site always, and sometimes they see that it goes, so they run quickly and get the batteries, they come. So there was a fellow speaking before Rabbi Hartman, and he was speaking and in mid-sentence the mic goes. It happens from time to time. Okay, what can you do? He puts the mic down. So the Rabbi Hartman takes over from him, his turn to say something. He stands up in his middle of speaking, and all of a sudden, the site team come back in quickly. The guy comes in, the caretaker, with the batteries. So he puts it in, and so Rahman he never normally takes the mic. He takes the mic and he spoke with the mic. Why? Because this guy schlepped to get the batteries, so I'm going to speak without the mic. He especially went to get the batteries. A person's got to have that sensitivity for other people. One final thing, just about sensitivity. I came across a fabulous idea, a Maisa with the Lubavitcher Rebbe. The Lubavitcher Rebbe, very interestingly, used to answer dozens, if not hundreds, of letters a day. People used to write to him from all corners of the world, and he would answer each one person. He would open each letter personally, read it. He would be able to read the letter super quick and respond. And that was his practice. Many great people do that. Chaim Kanievsky answered all the letters that came to him. It took a lot of his time, but it was machshavit a lot. Anyway, one time in the 1970s, one of the Hasidim of Lubavitch came to the Rebbe and said, Rebbe, I brought you a gift. This is a mechanical letter opener. You spend your day opening dozens, perhaps hundreds of letters. This will make your life a lot easier. After a few days, the Rebbe got in touch with the Chassid and said, look, I appreciate what you've given me, but I'm actually going to, you should return it. So the fellow said, what's the problem? So the Rebbe said, it makes too much noise. It's late at night, and I told him, it's too, but thank you. So the Chassid wasn't giving up so quick. He takes it back, he goes to the store and he says, listen, I need one which is totally quiet. Have you got a silent letter opener, mechanical letter opener? So he had one. So he buys that one, he takes it to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, look, you're very kind, but I'm doing it myself. I'm so sorry, but I need to open the letters myself. So he said, why? This will save you time. So the Rebbe said to him something so interesting, wouldn't cross my mind, but this is what he said. When I get letters, people are writing to me, they're in pain. More often than not, they're in pain. And they fold the letter, and as they put the letter into the envelope, most people seal a letter with the gum, with the sticky glue on the actual, on the adhesive on the letter, on the envelope, they close it. But the people who write to me, they're writing in pain when they seal it, and when they put it in, they seal it, their own tears are mixed in with those when they seal the envelope. He says, before I read the letter, I want to feel their tears. I want to connect to their feelings and their pain. Astonishing. And therefore, he didn't want to have a mechanical letter opener. Okay, let's go weiter. Okay, there's an amazing Ksav Kabbalah in the next piece in the Parsha. Let's go through some of the Psukim and then we'll mention this Ksav Kabbalah. Vayom Hashem al Moshe. This is in now towards the beginning of Perek Lamed Aleph, the second box on the page. Vayom Hashem al Moshe leimar. Va'al todaber b'nei Yisrael leimar. Ach es shabsoisai tishmoiru. You now have to keep Shabbos. Ki ois hi beini uveinechem. It's a sign between me and you. L'derasechem l'das ki Hashem mekadshchem. Fine. Shabbos. U'shmartem es ha-Shabbos ki kodesh hu lochem mechal lehem mois yumos ki kol ha'oise bo melacha v'nichros ha'nefesh ha'hi mekerev ha'mehel. Sheishes yom yaseh melacha. 6 days you work. Uvei mashvi Shabbos Shabbosein. Kodesh l'Hashem, etc., etc. V'shomer b'nei es ha-Shabbos las es ha-Shabbos d'ereson bris olam, etc., etc. Now, the Ksav Kabbalah is troubled by the expression es shabsoisai tishmoiru, which literally means my shabbosos, plural, you should keep. Really, it should just say it's shabbati, my Shabbos, in the singular you should keep. Why shabsoisai tishmoiru? Says the Ksav Kabbalah, bolosh yochid al rabbim, ki tam shabsoisai. Why is it in the plural? Ki ba'avur ki Shabbosos hashona him rabim. That's the Ramban. Because the Ramban says, because there are many Shabbosos in a year. Ulefi hamavur b'shem Shabbos sheyesh pishnayim b'hirosei. However, I say, says the Ksav HaKabbalah, that Shabbos has two aspects. Ha'echad, inyan habitl va'hefsek b'melacha. One aspect of Shabbos is cessation, stopping all type of melacha and work. V'hasheni, and the second aspect of Shabbos is inyan yishuv hadas l'inyonim elokim. More of a yishuv hadas, certain serenity of a spiritual nature. Imkain, yesh b'chol Shabbos v'Shabbos shtei shavisos. There are two aspects to every Shabbos. Shvisas haguf me'iskei ha'olam, a physical rest, v'shvisas yishuv hanefesh lisasik b'inyonim ruchnim elokim, and a sort of a more spiritual engagement, a spiritual resting. Ve'ein shvisas haguf levade ikka v'tachlis kiyum asej de shvisas Shabbos. Just stopping work is not the actual full kiyum of Shabbos. I remember one of my kids told me that the Kodesh teachers told them that Shabbos is a day of rest, not a day of sleep. Right? A day of rest, not a day of sleep. So just alone, just stopping work is not enough. Because really the stopping of the work is a means to achieve the Yishuv Hadas, that peace of mind, to enjoy the more spiritual aspect of Shabbos. Because that's the real objective of Shabbos, having the Yishuv Hadas to sort of connect in a more spiritual way. That explains the plural expression. That every Shabbos a person should keep two aspects of Shabbos. On one hand, the resting from the physical labor of Shabbos, and the resting to sort of engage in avodas Hashem, the more spiritual nature of Shabbos. And with that, he says a very fascinating insight. Since these two are connected, because ultimately it's one, the physical, the spiritual resting of Shabbos. The first one, stopping work, disconnecting in order to connect, is a prerequisite to the second. You have es shabsosai tishmeiru in plural, ki ois in the singular. Because there's one aspect, there's one real tachlis, and that is the shvisa, to get to the ruchni of Shabbos, through the physical resting. V'yitochin ki al kavona zu omru Chazal. That's pshat, perhaps, in what Chazal say. Ilu shimru Yisrael shtei Shabbos miyad nigalin. That if Klal Yisrael were to keep two Shabbos, they would be redeemed. Now, ein kavanos mal shtei Shabbos b'zmanim nifrodim. It doesn't mean two Shabbos. I remember as a kid when MBD would sing just one Shabbos and we'll all be free. There were some people who came across this Maimon Chazal. They say, "What do you mean just one Shabbos? You need two Shabbos." Right? And there's lots of Torah on that, maybe because one Shabbos impacts the week, and the second Shabbos is impacted by the week before, and you need two Shabbos. There's all Torah on it. But according to the Ksav HaKabbalah, it's very parshat. It's talking just one Shabbos. But there's two aspects to every Shabbos. That's what it means. Ilu shimru Yisrael shtei Shabbosos miyad henigolin. It means ki im shtei shvisos. You've got the two aspects of Shabbos, the physical Gashmi Shvisa, resting on Shabbos, and then of course the spiritual resting on Shabbos. And there's just really one, which is Beguf v'Nefesh, and that's really what it's referring to, this Maimon Chazal. So a very beautiful Ksav v'Kabbalah. Okay, let's move on. Now, as I mentioned, the main theme of the Parsha is, of course, the Chet of the Egel HaZahav. What I'd like to do is just go through some psukim and then make reference to something I saw in Rabbi Lef's Sefer about the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim, because that's what features later in the Parsha, the Hashem Kel Racham V'Chanun, and something very interesting about this. And it's something which we're very familiar with, of course, because of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Slichas time. We say this repeatedly. So I think there's something very important that emerges from it. So let's take a look at the psukim first. So this is now in Perek Lamed Beis, the bottom box of the page. Vayidaber Hashem and Moshe. Lech reid, go down. Ki shiches amcha, your people have become corrupted. Asher ha'elisam Eretz Mitzrayim, that you, Moshe Rabbeinu, brought out of Eretz Mitzrayim. Saru maher min haderech asher tzivisim, they have rapidly strayed from the way asher tzivisim that they have been commanded. Also lahem ha'egel masecha, they've made this molten calf. Vayishtachavu lo vayizbechu lo, they bow down to it, they offered up. Vayomru elu Elohecha Yisrael, these are your gods, the Jewish people asher luchem Eretz Mitzrayim, that brought you out of Egypt. Va'ato hanichali, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu to Moshe, and leave me alone, don't start davening, which of course, as Rashi says, is HaKadosh Baruch Hu's invitation to Moshe to start davening. Vayicha api ba'bohem, and he's made me very angry, Hashem says, va'achale ve'esa uschale goy gadol, and I'm going to destroy them, and I'm going to make you, Moshe Rabbeinu, the progenitor of the new people. Because after all, I made the bris of us. Yes, I promised Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that I'm never going to destroy them. I'm going to make, but you, after all, are the great grandson of Yaakov Avinu. Your father was Amram. Amram is the son of Kahas. Kahas is the son of Levi. And you, therefore, the great grandchild of Yaakov Avinu. Vayechal Moshe es pnei Hashem aleikov vayemen lo Hashem yecher apch b'mechach. Moshe Rabbeinu starts davening. This is the famous laning from Tanis. Vayinochem Hashem al haroah shediber lasis la'amo, turning over the page. Vayom Hashem. Now this is jumping to Perek Lamed Daled. Vayom Hashem al Moshe p'soloch shnei luchos avonim koroshenim. He forgives Klal Yisrael. He says to Moshe Rabbeinu, make the new luchos. You destroyed the first ones, now make new ones. Vayivsol shnei luchos avonim. He makes new luchos. Vayashke Moshe baboiker vayal har Sinai kasher tziva Hashem osay. He again climbs Har Sinai. Vayered Hashem be'onon vayitz yasev imoshom vayikra b'shem Hashem, the famous pasuk. Vayavar Hashem upon vayikra Hashem kel rachum v'chanon, etc., etc. Leitzach ezel alofim, the 13 midas harachamim. Vayimah Moshe vayikra darso vayishtachavu. Moshe Rabbeinu hurries and he bows down. Vayomim nomas hasichem benecha v'salachti la'avnenu v'chatasenu v'chatanu v'yomim hinei anochi kuris bris. Okay, that's the Parsha long and short. The Gemara Rosh Hashanah says, when it says Vayavar Hashem al pona vayikra, says the Gemara Rosh Hashanah something astonishing. Omer Rabbi Yochanan, Ilmole mikra kasav iyah. Were it not for the fact that this is Torah and the pasuk says it, we wouldn't be able to darshan this. Melamed, this pasuk teaches us, shenis atef Hakadosh Baruch Hu k'shliach tzibur, that as it were, Hakadosh Baruch Hu wraps himself in a talis like a chazan. Ve'her lo leMoshe seder tefillah, and he taught Moshe Rabbeinu the order of tefillah. Omalei kol zman sheYisrael chotim, whenever Klal Yisrael sin and they're in trouble and they need to do tshuva, Ya'aseh lefonai kaseder hazeh, do what I do, va'ani moichel lohem, i.e., wrap yourself in a talis and say Hashem Hashem kal racham v'chanan, and say the Yud Gil Midas Harachamim. And moreover, the Gemara says a bit later on that Omid, Omer Rav Yehuda beris krusa l'shleish esrei midais she'enan chozus reikom, that saying these words, a person, they will never go back empty-handed. Shenemah hinei anochi koreis bris, because this is a bris, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, a covenant HaKadosh Baruch Hu has sealed with the Jewish people. This is the way out, to say the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. Now, the question is, and this is just to end the share, I just want to mention this. How did Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim work? Well, what is this secret code that HaKadosh Baruch Hu taught Moshe Rabbeinu, that whenever we sin, this is how we do tshuva, and we use this, like I said, repeatedly during the Slichas and the Aseres Mei Tshuva? Is it that you actually just say the words and just by magic it happens? Or is there something more, that you must accompany the recitation of the Yud Gimel Midas with emulating the Midas that they represent? How does it work? And the truth is, this is a machlokes. It's a big machlokes how the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim work. Is it merely saying it, or is it emulating the Midas that they're actually representing? The Talmud Devorah, the famous Sefer, goes through the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, and it talks about the various Midas that we need to actually work on. Or, according to some, the mere recitation of Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim is enough. Now, let's just speak this out for a few moments. The starting point is the Rashi. The Rashi over there says, Bris krusa l'shleish esrei midras halalu. Says Rashi, there is a covenant. She'em yazkirum Yisrael b'tfilas ta'nisom einon chozus reikom. If they merely say it, yazkirum means they mention it, then they don't go back empty-handed. And Rashi in this week's Parsha says, "V'karosi b'shem Hashem lefanecha lametcha seder bakashas rachamim af im tichle zechus avos." Even if zechus avos, the merit of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, has been finished, v'cheseder zeh she'atzaroya osim u'tzuf. And you see, according to this Seder, this Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, you see me, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wrapped in a talis, v'ko Yud Gimel Midas, and you read, you recite these Yud Gimel Midas, Melamed es Yisrael lasos kein. He's teaching Klal Yisrael to do this, to just merely say it. V'alidei she'azkiru lefonai, racham v'chanan yihiyeh onenim ki rachmai lo kolim. Because my mercy is never consumed, never dissipates. In other words, it's mashma from Rashi, that it's the mere recitation of the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim that's sufficient. And that is the opinion of a Pirush called the Tzeder L'Derech. The Tzeder L'Derech, this is quite it's one of the early Achronim. He was born in 1550 in Posen in Poland, one of the great early Achronim. He died in 1623, so this is around the time of the Shulchan Aruch. It's an early time. And he says the following, look at this. Yesh makshin. I'm in the penultimate box of the page. Yesh makshin. There are those who ask, Halu onuroyin harbe pa'amim shein chezus reikom. How can there be a bris karusa, this covenant, that you're never going to sort of go home empty-handed, but sometimes we find that we do go home empty-handed, and that the tefillahs aren't answered. Umatartzin, and the answer is, shelo hivtichu she'enim chezus reikom, and a dafka bizman she'ya'asu Yisrael ha'yud gimel midas. What it means is, he's suggesting, that it's not enough to just recite them, but presumably you have to emulate the midas that they are sort of explaining. And therefore it's not enough to just say, you've got to emulate, and if you don't emulate fully, then you're not going to be answered. Which means you have to imitate HaKadosh Baruch Hu's midas. Ma'HaKadosh Baruch Hu rachum af atzu rachum l'chalim. And umavian raya miloshen hamayim b'perek hamid Rosh Hashanah. They bring a raya from the Gemara we just said. Omer Rabbi Yochanan ilmolei mikra kosav yeshel omer milamed shen disativ HaKadosh Baruch Hu k'shlech tzibur v'her le Moshe seder tefillah. He showed Moshe Rabbeinu how to daven. V'omar lo kozman sheYisrael chaytin ya'asu lefonai kasei dazeh v'ani moichelem ad kan l'shonai hari omar ya'asu lefonai. It doesn't say yazkiru or yomru. It's ya'asu. Ya'asu means you have to do, to actually carry out these midas, to actually emulate them. It doesn't say just say them. That's what some people say. Says the Tzeder L'Derech. Next paragraph, ve'en ze emes. I don't agree. I think reciting the 13 Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim is all that you need to do. Shari Rashi Pirish Perek HaNisa, because Rashi, this is the above Rashi I mentioned, he picks up on the nusach of Rashi that I mentioned above, that if they merely say it, but tefillas tanisam enu chez reikom ad kan l'shonei hari atzaraya mefurish shekosav she'im yazkiram. You just have to say the Yud Gimel Midas Rachamim, and then the magic works. V'oid, and furthermore, shari Gimel Midas Harishonos hem Gimel Shemus Hashem Kel. Furthermore, I'll prove it to you, he says, that it can't just be emulating the midas of Hashem, because the first 3 midas are just the names of Hashem. Hashem, Kel, etc. Racham v'chanan already means a certain midas. But Hashem, and Kel, he says, l'chayra, are just names of Hashem. So surely just reciting is enough. You can't say that the Jewish people should do that. Do what? And the truth is the kasha is not a kasha from the first place. It doesn't mean that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to answer the tefillahs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu lock, stock and barrel. It just means, Chazal just say, they won't go home empty-handed, totally. In other words, some aspect of the tefillah will be answered, but not all of it. It says yasu, which implies they've actually got to do. Yeah, you know what yasu means? You put the talis on, that's all. So therefore, according to the Tzeder L'Derech and others as well, they are of the opinion that the mere recitation, the mere saying Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, that's all you need to do. However, there is the second school of thought. The Nachlas Yaakov, the Rabbi Yaakov Lubabaum, he is later, he was born in 1770, he died in 1823, very famous for his Pirushim on Shulchan Aruch, the Chavas Das in Yerodea, and the Nesivos HaMishpat in Choshen Mishpat, one of the classics for him. He says that it's not enough. You actually have to emulate the midas. And there is others who hold like that as well, and that school of thought. Let's just read that. Vayavar Aponov, B'shas, he's again quoting the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, Amrina Melamish Nisat V'HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kashatz. Hadova Kashel Oimre. This is a very difficult thing to understand. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was on tell us, what does that mean? V'nira HaKavona. I think Pshat in the Gemara is Shebeshah Shebikesh Moshe, when Moshe wanted Hayom Oire Kol Yud Gimel Midas Sharachamim L'Racham Al Yisrael V'hainu Shenis Atev Kashatz. That means Koloimar Shesivev Atzmoi. He sort of cloaked himself B'chol Hamidas B'chtei L'Rachem, in the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. And the truth is, according to the Talmud Devera and others, Hashem Kel are midas which we can emulate. We just have to understand what Hashem Kel Racham etc. means. V'her leMoshe Yisrael chaytin sheyasu gamkein kaseda hazeh kaleima sheyisavu atzmim b'chol midas shel rachamim, i.e., they should clothe themselves in the midas harachamim. L'rachim al acherim u'bevada gam HaKadosh Baruch Hu yirachem aleim v'yaseh nes. In other words, this prophetic vision of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a talis is hinting to the fact that we need to clothe ourselves in the midas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu possesses, these Yud Gimel midas. It's not enough just to say them. We actually have to emulate HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And Rabbi Leff, he quotes in Ibn Ezra, who says something very beautiful. Why is it that we only wear a talis during tefillah? Why do we wear a talis all day, the whole time, a talis gadol, a big talis? So he says that the idea is that a person should understand, you put the talis on when you daven, that lip service is not enough. But rather, we have to live the tefillas. And therefore, you put the talis on to show that it's not enough to just speak, but you've got to actually do something. And therefore, there are two schools of thoughts about how the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim work, whether you just say them or whether you actually have to emulate the midas which they represent. So I thought that was an interesting point on the Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, which is a central part of this week's Parsha. So there we have three ideas this evening. The first is the lesson in sensitivity, the split of this Parsha, and very unusually, a very long Rishon, long Sheni, and short Parshas to protect the kavod of all the other aliyahs. The only person you can call up comfortably without offending him is the Levi, who did not sin at the Chet of the Egel. And to facilitate that, you have a long Rishon, a long Sheni, and they're very short 5 other parshas, and the 3 stories that I mentioned. Then you have the Ksav Kabbalah v'Shabsosai Tishmeiru. Ki Ois is Lashon Rabim, Lashon Yochid. The answer is Shabbos is Lashon Rabim, Shabsosai Tishmeiru, because there are 2 aspects of Shabbos. There's Shvisas HaGuf and Shvisas HaNefesh. And you need both. The Shvisas HaGuf is to facilitate Shvisas HaNefesh. And perhaps he says that's what Chazal mean, Ilu Shimru Shab Yisrael, Shtei Shabbosos Miyad Nigalin, i.e. it's one Shabbos, but it's both aspects of Shabbos, then Miyad Nigalin. And then lastly, these Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim, that Machlokes, is it the mere recitation, or must the recitation be accompanied by emulating the midas? Okay, we'll leave it there.